welcome and thank you for coming to our Legal Careers and CVs event. We're extremely lucky today to have Steve Wells from Kaplan Bar School, who's also an ex-teacher here from Westminster. So Steve's going to impart his wisdom on the legal profession, and there should be time at the end for some questions if you have any, so please write them down.
Good evening. Yes, I'm Steve Wells, and I always feel at the beginning of these things I have to sort of justify my existence by telling you a little bit about who I am and what gives me a right to stand up here and talk at you. I'm a member of the bar. I was called in 2000. I'm a criminal practitioner. I've done a lot of other things in the past, but I've ended up just doing crime because that's where the sex, drugs and violence are. I am also a tutor on the bar professional training course at Kaplan Law School, and yes, up until the end of last academic year, I was a GDL crime tutor here at Sunny University of Westminster. And what I want to talk to you about this evening is the question really of, well, is the bar for you? So before I start doing that, I want to just find out a little bit about who you are. Can you just raise your hand if you're in the first year? Raise your hand if you're in the second year. Raise your hand if you're in the third year. Raise your hand if you're not a student here at all and you just thought you'd come in because it seemed sort of warm and dry in here. No? Right, okay. I want to start by telling you a little bit about what I think about the bar. I think it's great. You can probably tell from my apparent age that 10 years ago when I was called to the bar, I was not anything like as young as most of you are. I'd done an awful lot of things before I finally decided to go to the bar, but when I did it, I knew that it was absolutely the right thing for me. It was a job that made me get up every morning and think, yeah, I want to do this. I'm excited about going to work. And even though I am now a full-time teacher, and I enjoy doing that as well, I still regularly go to court because it's what I enjoy doing. Please bear in mind, while I'm talking to you, that that's my view, that's my angle on this. You're listening to an enthusiast about the bar. Don't take it from me. What I hope this evening is going to enable you to do is to think a bit more about, well, whether you might feel the same way about it as I do. I'm not telling you you have to feel the same way as I do, because it would be weird if you all did. But I want to just start to get you thinking about, well, what it might be like for you being at the bar. I'm going to start with a little thought experiment. I'm going to take you to a Crown Court. I'm going to give you a set of papers to read. It is the prosecution brief in a rape trial, and you are going to be prosecution counsel. The complainant in this rape trial is in the witness waiting room. Soon she is going to come in and give her evidence. Her family and her friends are in the public gallery. This trial and the outcome of it means an enormous amount to them and to the complainant herself. The jury have been sworn. The judge has done what judges always do at the beginning of trials. They've had a friendly little chat with the jury, explained the role of the judge, the role of the jury. Don't go home and Google things about the evidence, all those sorts of things that juries are told before trials start. And then there comes the moment when the judge looks up from the papers, looks straight at you and says, yes. And that's your cue to get up. You are now going to make your opening speech. You are going to tell the jury what the case is all about. You are going to tell them about the salient features of the evidence. You are going to tell them why it is that you say, as prosecuting counsel, that at the end of this trial, when they've heard all the evidence, when the foreman of the jury is invited to stand up and answer that question on count 1, do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty, you're going to tell them why you say they should say guilty. A heavy responsibility. Now, that's what I'm going to put you, and I want you to think about, how does that make you feel? And your feelings about that will be somewhere on a spectrum. Over at this end of the spectrum, there is, that is my worst nightmare. I would be so overcome with terror that I wouldn't be able to speak, and there is a grave danger that I would lose control of my bowels. Over at the other end of the spectrum, over here, there is, yeah, that sounds fine. I don't find that at all concerning at all. Wouldn't be in the slightest bit nervous. Yes, I'd just go right ahead and do it. If you feel that, you are suffering from some kind of condition and you need to seek help. I've been doing this for 10 years. I still get quite butterfly in my stomach before I stand up to do an opening speech, and everybody else in the profession that I know does. However, if you're about here, if you're towards this end of the spectrum, you might want to do a little bit more thinking about, well, is this really for you? And you will want to weigh up the pros and cons of life at the bar. And I've put on a slide for you here a brief bullet point list of the positives. First, litigation of thrill. You are in competition. You are going out every day to win or to lose, and a lot rides for your clients on what you are doing. It's a very exciting profession to be in. Thinking, researching, advising. If you like an intellectual challenge, there is nothing like the bar for giving your brain a good healthy workout every day. It is competitive. If you are the sort of person that likes winning, and believe me, in court, I have tried the options. I have tried winning and I have tried losing, and believe me, winning feels better to me. So if that's something that appeals to you, the bar could be good for you. Variety of work. If, like me, you are at the criminal bar, you will spend your day, yes, talking to other barristers and to judges, but also you're going to be forging relationships with members of court staff, because let's face it, the most important person in the building is the usher. That's the person who's going to get your case called on first. But you're also going to be meeting people who are, let's face it, criminals. And they're really interesting people, in my experience. And as well as that, police officers, all sorts of investigators and witnesses who can come from absolutely all walks of life, and you will meet some fascinating people, whether you do crime or indeed any other sort of law at the bar. Independence. For some people that's a big turn on, for some it's not, but as a member of the independent bar, you're self-employed. You don't have a boss. You get to decide how you get the work done. You've got a set of papers to prepare for trial. If you want to do it at 3 o'clock in the morning, do it at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody is going to tell you to do anything different. Success on your merits. It's a job that you do very largely in public. If you're good, people will see you being good, and they will send you more work. So you will succeed simply by being good. It is a professional vocation. By going into the bar, you are going into a community of people who share your interests. And you may well feel that at the bar, you are doing things that are worthwhile. There are people out there with legal problems that need sorting out, whether they be problems of civil law or criminal law. And at the bar, you get an opportunity, and really it is a privilege, to step for a short while into those people's lives and take their problems and do constructive things with them. Finally, reward. you get paid money. Now, obviously, if you're daft like me and you do criminal law, you don't get paid much money. But in other areas of the profession, in corporate and commercial work, there are very large amounts of money to be made if you're good. So those are the positives. Keep watching the screen closely, and I will go on to the possible negatives. Every day, you're going into court for a fight. It's win or lose. You could lose. That is stressful. Your client expects a lot of you. That's worrying. Thinking, researching, advising, and getting it right is an essential part of the profession. Every time somebody comes to you for your professional opinion, they expect you to have researched it thoroughly, be completely up to date on the law, and get it right. First time, every time. It is a profession in which you are just not allowed to make mistakes. Competitive. Yeah, you can see the upside of that. It's nice to win. But then again, the flip side of that is every time you go to court, the person on the other side, who's sitting or standing just a couple of paces away from you along counsel's row, is the person that you refer to as your opponent. Every time you go to court, there's somebody who's against you. And that's not always a pleasant feeling. Variety of work, workplace, people. I have been to Rhyl County Court. I have been to Liverpool County Court. I have been to Nelson County Court, which somebody told me a couple of days ago actually doesn't exist anymore. How many of you have been to Nelson? Anybody know where Nelson is? Yep. Little sort of rather tired and run down ex-mill town in Lancashire. It's a job that sometimes involves getting up very, very early in the morning and then getting the train to middle of nowhere court in the middle of nowhere. And when you arrive at middle of nowhere court in the middle of nowhere, you don't know anybody there. It can be very lonely. Independence. Yeah. There's nobody telling you what to do, but the problem with that can be there's nobody telling you what to do. If your arse needs kicking, you've got to kick it yourself. If you have decided, well, yeah, I'll work on those papers at 3 o'clock in the morning after I've been out, and you spot in the papers a legal problem, is there anybody there to ask about it? No. It's the middle of the night. You're on your own. Well, that can be pretty worrying as well. Success on your merits, well, the flip side of that couldn't be more obvious, could it? If you're good, people will notice. If you're bad, people will notice that as well, because you do your job in public. You do your advocacy in court. People can come along and watch. It's a professional vocation. Yeah, but I'm sure you're all aware that there are people out there who have views about the professions that are not always complimentary. Since you are studying law, I think somebody has to tell you at some stage, and I don't see why it shouldn't be me, there are some people who don't like lawyers. Sorry, it's true. There are people who see lawyers in general and barristers in particular as being fat cat parasites on other people's misfortune and misery. And that can be something that is difficult to live with at times. Reward, well, I've already mentioned that if, like me, you do criminal law, the big problem with that, and increasingly with family law, is that there is only one paying customer, and it's the government, through the Legal Services Commission. And if they decide that they don't want to give you any money, they won't give you any money. So it is a profession, there are some areas of the profession in which it is possible to be very good and to work very hard and still be very broke. So those are the pros and cons, and you need to weigh those up. As you saw, the list of negatives is as long as the list of positives. So is going to the bar a challenge that you want to take on? And while you're thinking about that, I want to talk to you a little bit about this bloke here. Now, he is clinging on to an overhang of a piece of rock. Over here, some way below him, there appear to be some clouds and snow-capped mountains, so I think we can assume that he's quite a long way off the floor. And it's a bit cropped at the top here, but as far as I can see, there is nobody up here about to chuck him down a piece of rope to pull him up, or indeed to offer him a cup of tea. So he does appear to be in a slightly difficult position. You might say he's experiencing some of the things that you experience at the bar. His position is very challenging. He's certainly very independent. There is nobody there to help him. But have a closer look at him. I can get closer to him than you can. And what I can see is that he appears to be wearing, well, something quite different from what I'm wearing, for example. It appears to be some pretty fancy high-tech gear that no doubt helps him to do what he's doing. So he's equipped himself properly to give himself the best chance of achieving what he wants to achieve, which is being about here. Oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. These touch-sensitive boards catch me out every time. So he's given himself the best chance that he can give himself. Now, you can see from the picture that he's kind of in the middle of something at this stage, and probably wouldn't thank you for walking up to him and tapping him on the shoulder, but just imagine that you could, and you said to him, look, is there anywhere else in the world you'd rather be? And I suspect his answer to you would be, no, this is what I choose to do, this is what I love doing, so yeah. I'm hanging from my fingertips from a chunk of rock 1,000 feet up, but that's what I like doing. So, the bar can be like that for you. It can be daunting, challenging, terrifying, but if it's the right thing for you, there is nothing like it in the world. So, let's have a look at the realities of what it's like trying to get into the bar. If we look at the year 2000 to 2001, there were on offer very close to 700 pupilages that year, and there were 1,400 BBC students. So your chances of getting pupillage if you came out of bar school 10 years ago were about 1 in 2. Go down to the most recent year that this slide deals with, 2009 to 2010. The number of pupilages has gone down to 460, and the number of bar school students has gone up to very nearly 1,800. So your chances have gone from 1 in 2 to something much closer to 1 in 4. Now, at first glance, that might seem like very bad news. So, what can you do to give yourself a better chance? Well, I'll come back to that later. Let's have a look at some more, perhaps slightly disturbing facts about going to the bar. These are out-of-date numbers, but I'm sure you get the idea. Going to bar school isn't cheap. I think now, if you're going to go to bar school in London, you're probably looking at somewhere in the region of £15,000 to £16,000. If you're looking to go to bar school in the provinces, you're looking at something in the region of £11,000 to £12,000. And I don't suppose that many of you have that sort of money conveniently in your back pocket. But there is funding available. One of the great things going for you, if you choose to go to the bar, is the Inns of Court. If you want to be a barrister, you have to join one of them. And they are quite wealthy institutions. And they are also institutions that are absolutely dedicated to education. They are all charitable societies, and they have their charitable status because largely what they do is education. And part of their educational effort is handing out scholarships to people who want to go to bar school. And this figure here is one that might interest you. If you're going to go to bar school and you're going to have to pay £15,000 to £16,000 to go there, I'm sure you can see that a free scholarship, and I want to make it clear I don't mean loan or anything like this, this is just money that your inn will give you if they consider you to be somebody worthy of a scholarship. £10,000, some grants are more than that, will make a sizable dent in what you have to hand over to your BPTC provider out of your own pocket. And you can see here that the deadline is the first Friday in November. I think we've missed it this year, haven't we? I can't even remember what date we're on, but it's something you might want to do before you even go to bar school. You can get a student membership of an inn, and you can apply for a scholarship before you even start. So if you can do that, and you can get the funding together, the next thing to do is to go and do the bar professional training course. And that's where you get to meet the likes of me. My job at Kaplan Bar School is not to make people into barristers. That's not what I do for a living. What I do at bar school is attempt to equip students with the basic skills that they will need as a starting point when they go into pupillage. And when they go into pupillage, they will learn a lot more by going to court with their pupil supervisor and with other members of chambers. And I think you'll find if you talk to any member of the bar, they will tell you that at the end of your pupillage, it just keeps going on. You just keep learning all the time. But the bar professional training course is just the first step on the way of learning what you are going to do. You are probably aware that the BPTC, as it's now called, used to be the BBC, the Bar Vocational Course. That's what it was called when I did it. That underwent a review a few years ago, which was done by a committee, the Wood Committee, which consisted of the great, the good, and James Wakefield, who is the BPTC course director at Kaplan Law School. And they looked at what they perceived as being a number of problems with the BBC as it was at the time. And I'm just going to give you a moment to read that. The problem was, and still is to an extent, that obviously the bar schools need to be run. I myself have a strong prejudice in favour of being paid at the end of every month. And therefore, the bar schools have got to get some money in from somewhere. And what they do is, of course, they get students in through the door who pay those fees that were on the board a couple of slides back. But the problem was that some of those people who were taken onto those courses were people who, realistically, were never going to make it at the bar. A particular problem you can see picked out here is a problem with some people just not having the ability in written or spoken English to be able to do what barristers do, which is basically to persuade people by using English. And you might think, well, so what? You know, if those people have got 15,000 quid that they want to chuck away on a course that's going to get them nowhere, well, fine, let them get on with it. But the problem is that the way that training is done in bar schools involves an awful lot of interactive role-play. You know, if I want to teach any two of you how to conduct a conference with a criminal client, what I'm going to have to do, because you're the only people I've got, is sit you down, and one of you is going to play the part of the barrister and the other one is going to play the part of the client. And you are going to learn by practicing those skills in what we hope is as realistic an environment that we can create, given the fact that we are using students as fake clients, as it were. But you're not going to get anything out of that exercise that I've just described if you can't get over the fundamental hurdle that you can't communicate with the person on the other side of the table because their English isn't good enough. And it's not just a problem with quality of spoken and written English. We don't just do those sorts of role plays, we do a lot of teaching that is not terribly dissimilar to the sort of teaching that you have here. You need to learn a lot about procedural rules of what you are and what you are not allowed to do in court, how you go about drafting pleadings for civil cases and so on. And in the small group sessions in which we teach those things, it holds everybody else back if there are people in those groups who just aren't as quick as everybody else. So the experience of teaching for everybody is improved if the overall quality of the ability to learn of the people in the room goes up. And this is what the Wood Committee wanted to try to achieve. So, we're now in the second year of the Bar Professional Training course, which is what came out of the Wood Committee, and they have attempted to change a number of things. I say attempted because these attempts have, in many cases, been spectacularly unsuccessful, it has to be admitted. Oh, there's a view out of our window at school, incidentally. It's nice, isn't it? But one of the proposals was that everybody taking the course would have to sit the IELTS English language test, and that everybody would have to achieve a score of at least 7.5 on that test. The Bar Standards Board then said, no, you can't do that. It's disproportionate because people who are going onto the course who are native English speakers, well, what's the point of them doing an English test? We know that they can speak English. So the next proposal was, well, we'll just take the people who don't have English as their first language and we'll do the IELTS test for them. And I'm sure you can imagine what the response to that was, which is, well, that's clearly discriminatory, you can't do that. So for the time being, this idea has been parked. It's simply not possible to do it. What is still going ahead, probably not in 2012, more likely it seems in 2013, is that there is going to be a BSB aptitude test. So this is going to be the basic hurdle that everybody who's going to go to bar school needs to get over. And it will be designed to test reasoning, English language, and it will be sat twice a year, and it will be available for everybody to do it, because the people who are going to run it, and I have to confess that I laughed and simply didn't believe it when I was first told this, but the people who are going to run it are the people who currently run the theory part of the driving test. So in order to, yeah, exactly my response. So it'll be a thing that you'll do on a computer. There'll be a timed session on a computer, and you'll be able to fill in your answers on this thing. But the computer that you're sitting at will be at a driving test centre. So when you go in there, the seat will still be warm from somebody who's been sitting on it doing their theory driving test. And then you go in there and you do your BSB aptitude test. And the idea is that this is going to weed out the people who just don't have any chance of making it, so that the people who are going into the bar schools will only be people who have a realistic opportunity of actually getting pupillage and actually getting somewhere in the profession. The BSB don't stop there. They want to ensure, and I should pause here and say that from your point of view, having a 1 in 4 chance of getting pupillage when you come out of bar school might sound like a bad thing. From the bar's point of view, it is great. It means that they get to cherry pick only the very best people who are coming out. And to ensure that only the best people come out, what they have already done is they have upped the pass mark of all the exams from 50% to 60%. And James, who sat on the committee, he's perfectly frank about this. He said, well, we thought about it and we thought, if we're going to let people out there to give legal services and legal advice to the general public, it's probably not good enough that they only know half of it. It just ought to be better than that. So but the pass mark for everything has gone up to 60%. The litigation exams on the course come in 2 parts, multiple choice and short answer questions. And it used to be the case that if, for example, your short answer question answers were rubbish, but your multiple choice score was good, they would be averaged out and you would end up with a score that would get you through. Now, you have to pass both halves separately, so you can't get away with just being good enough for the multiple choice questions. You've got to make sure that that your knowledge is sufficiently detailed to do the short answer questions as well. It used to be the case that if you failed, you could resit, and then if you failed that, you could resit again. So you had 3 opportunities at every assessment. That has been cut down to 2. So it's the 2 strikes and you're out rule. Either you pass everything within your first 2 goes, or that's it. 1, you're out. 2, you never get an opportunity to do it again. It is all over. If you fail more than 50% of the course first time round, you don't get to resit anything at all. It is completely over without any resits. And the BSB are completely unapologetic about this. They want to make it tough so that only the best people get through. Also, so that they can take control of the standard of the exams, what the BSB are starting to do is to make the assessments less like university assessments, where your exam paper is set within your university and sat within your university, and much more like A-levels, where the paper is set centrally but sat locally. So this year, for the first time, civil litigation and remedies, criminal litigation and evidence, ethics assessments are all being set centrally. So everybody at all of the bar schools will take the same exams in those. And again, this is an attempt by the BSB to generally float standards up. And the negatives are obvious. Yeah, it is going to make it tougher both to get into the course at the end, at the beginning, and to pass out of the course at the end. Positives, if only good people get in when you are sitting in your small group teaching session of usually about a dozen people, everybody else in that room is going to be somebody who has a realistic chance of making it at the bar, and they are a resource for you. They are people that you can bounce ideas off. They are people that you can learn from. And likewise, they can learn from you. And also, if fewer people go in at the beginning of the course and fewer of them get out at the end of it, there are ultimately fewer people competing for the inevitably limited number of pupilages, one of which you want. Or on the subject of pupilages, the pupilage portal opens for a limited time each year. Don't get too hung up on exactly what these dates are, because it does change a bit from year to year, but this gives you an idea of roughly what the chronological structure of it is. The portal opens in spring. It stays open for about 6 weeks. Then there is a quiet period. Nobody is allowed to make any offers while applications are considered and interviews take place. And then in July and August, offers are made, and then there is a clearing process later on. You can apply for pupillage before you go to bar school. There are people at Kaplan Law School now who already have pupillage, and in some cases, the people who are going to the fancier commercial sets and so on, those are quite generously funded pupillages. There are people who know that they are going to come out of bar school, they're going to go into pupillage, and in their pupillage year, they're going to be paid £60,000. And obviously, that somewhat takes the sting out of handing over your 15,000 quid to bar school. So it is something to consider doing in advance. Of course, this is no use to you whatever unless you are going to get pupillage. And so I want to talk to you just briefly about how you maximise your chances of being one of the people whose application actually goes forward, rather than joining the pile of applications in the bin. This has been compiled by James Wakefield. He's had about 1,000 students pass in front of him at Nottingham Law School, where he used to be, and now at Kaplan Law School. And he's boiled it down to basically what you need. In your degree, you need a 2-1. And if it all goes pear-shaped and you get a 2-2, do something else for a living. No amount of getting later masters, BCLs, or anything like that will cure a degree that isn't good enough. You need a 2-1. Should you do a master's? My advice to you about whether you should do a master's is there are 2 circumstances under which you should. Firstly, if you are going into a particularly specialised area of law. I give you an example, actually not from the bar, but from the solicitor's profession. My wife is a shipping solicitor, and she did a master's in maritime law at UCL, because that was what was going to get her into the particular specialised area that she wanted to go into, and the same is true at the bar. The second reason for doing a master's is if you want to. If there is something that you think you can do on an LLM course that you will find interesting and it will add to your experience of immersing yourself in the law, great, do it. It's worth doing just for that. And yes, it's an extra thing to have on your CV, but there is no rule that says you have to do one. You will see on some chambers' websites an outline of what they want from pupils. It's very rare for them to say that we want a master's or something like that from you. And even if you phone them up and you say, well, is it necessary to have a master's? In general, they'll say to you, no, that's fine. Most chambers' websites have a list of the members of chambers on them, and you can usually click on each member and you'll get a little sort of potted biography of them and their most salient cases and that sort of thing. Click on the last 5 people on the list, the most junior ones. If they've all got masters, the chances are that really you do need a master's to get into that set. You know, maybe if you're trying to get into quadrant chambers and you want to do shipping and aviation law, maybe you do need one. But in most sets, you don't. You need to be able to demonstrate that you really are committed to going to the profession. So show what you've done. You need to have done at least 3 mini-pupilages, and there are many, many chambers that offer these. Many pupilages are in general not funded, so it doesn't cost chambers anything to take you on for a couple of weeks. Get out there and do them. Pick up the phone and just call. Even sets of chambers that on their website don't say they offer mini pupilages, if you just phone up and ask, a lot of them will say yes. It's probably a good idea to do a holiday placement at a firm of solicitors as well. It might be attractive to a set of chambers to think, well, you know, this is somebody who's looked at all of the options and has opted for the bar as an informed decision, having looked on the other side of the fence as well. Do some pro bono work. The free representation unit is still out there, as are a number of other pro bono schemes run by universities, by the Bar Council and so on. It looks good if you do it. Do other things that will demonstrate that you have or have been developing the sorts of skills that might be useful to you as a barrister. Mooting and debating are obvious. What we do in the profession is we stand up and we try to persuade people of things. So if you've done that, that's good. Bear in mind when you are making out your application that those are not the only ways of getting public speaking experience. Public speaking crops up all over the place. If you have been the chairman of the Tenants Association of the block of flats that you live in, you will have addressed meetings. You will have gained public speaking experience by doing that. Put it in your application. Realise the value of the things that you have done. It is particularly impressive if you have been able to talk to a variety of audiences. If I can go back to my chairman of the Tenants Association example, if you've done that, you've had to stand up and talk to the tenants at meetings, but maybe there are things that you have particularly needed to get done. So you've had to address the councillors at council meetings. If there is a threat of a major road that's going to cause your block of flats to be knocked down, maybe you've had to lobby your MP. Maybe you've had to go to the Houses of Parliament and talk to a committee. It doesn't matter whether you've actually done those things or not. What does matter is thinking about the experiences you've had and think of a way of presenting it that makes the person reading it, hey, yeah, think, yeah, but this is actually interesting and relevant experience. It's not just mooting and debating. There may well be other things that you've done that are equally relevant. Don't give the impression that public speaking, mooting and debating is everything that you do. Chambers will want to see that you have something outside of this. And personability, there's a letter missing from that. Personability. Put an I in there. It's very important. Remember that if you become a pupil and then ultimately a tenant in a set of chambers, the other members of that set of chambers are going to be seeing you most days. And if they think, good grief, this person has done this amount of mooting and this amount of debating and they're dull. Do I want to actually come into chambers and talk to this person every evening? If the answer to that question is no, they won't have you. You need You need to demonstrate to them that you're a real interesting human being. So put in your application what you've done. Put in your interests. And I don't care whether your interests are sports, or socialising, or real ale, or fly fishing, or community drama, or whatever you do. Whatever you're going to put in your application about whatever it is that you do, make it relevant. Remember what we do at the bar. We work with other people. We try to persuade other people. If you have been the secretary of your local football club, it doesn't matter that it's a football club. It's a forum in which you have had to put forward your ideas about how things ought to be done. Perhaps you've had to persuade other people that they ought to go along with your idea. Get it in there. Realise the value of what you've done. Gap year. Gap years. They can be things that make you a more interesting person and therefore a more attractive proposition for a set of chambers. Mark Harries at Lincoln's Inn sums it up this way. You're going to be talking about a lot of things on your pupillage application form. You're going to be talking about your academic ability, you've got a 2-1 and all of that, so is everybody else. You're going to be talking about your commitment to going to the bar. I mean, given some of those figures that I showed you earlier on, nobody is doing this unless they are really committed to it. So that you get one of those free with every application. Accuracy. If you put in a pupillage application that has basic spelling and grammar errors in it, it's going in the bin. The most important, again, personability. Sell yourself as a person that they want in through the door, a person they want to see regularly. And the other thing they want to know is that you're prepared to work hard. If your application looks rushed or shoddy, you know, the sort of thing that you've set aside 15 minutes to do, that is going to speak volumes about you. The best way of demonstrating that you are prepared to put in some hard work is to actually put in some hard work to your application so that it looks good. Be selective about what you put in about your work experience. If you have done 20 mini pupillages and you are applying to a set of family law chambers, just talk about the many pupillages that you've done at family law chambers. It needs to be manageable for the person who's reading it, and you don't want to look like somebody who has taken a completely undirected scattergun approach. Don't just say, I went to such and such chambers and spent 2 weeks with such and such a barrister. Because the obvious response to that is, well, so what? Say what you learned by doing it. What did you actually experience while you were there? What did you learn while you were there that is going to make you a better pupil and a better barrister? What did you do there that gave you the skills that you're going to need to become a barrister? On every application form that you will ever fill in for bar school, for pupillage, there will always be a question along these lines. Why do you want to go to the bar? It is regularly answered very, very badly. The standard answer is, I enjoy advocacy, I enjoy standing up, talking to people, I enjoy the intellectual challenge of constructing argument, and I like the idea of being independent and self-employed. That's what everybody says in response to that question. So by all means say those things, because for most people going to the bar, those things are actually true. But do bear in mind everybody else is saying that. Come up with something to say that is your story, that's interesting, that is about you. Whether it's that your parents were involved in some litigation that was really important to them, and you know, litigation can be really important to you if it's about where the back fence of your garden goes. As long as you've got something interesting to say about it, if you've known somebody who has inadvertently become mixed up with the criminal justice system, if that's something that made you interested in knowing more about it and getting involved in it, talk about that. Talk about something that is personal to you, that's going to set you apart from the crowd. Don't be trite. When I am in charge of the world, and I daily expect the phone call to come along that says, Steve, you're in charge now. And it's bound to happen quite soon. It's just due to some kind of clerical oversight that it hasn't happened yet. What will happen is that in every room, in every bar school, in every set of chambers, where people are interviewed for places, if anybody is asked any question about why they want to become a lawyer or why they want to go to the bar, and they come up with an answer that says, broadly speaking, something along the lines of, I believe in justice, those rooms will all be equipped with a big red button that the interviewer can just go, and a hole will open in the floor, and the candidate will just fall through the floor, never to be seen again. I mean, what kind of answer is, I believe in justice? I mean, does it really mark you out from anybody else? Is there the slightest possibility that you could go out into the street, pick somebody at random, and go up to them and say, do you believe in justice? And they might say to you, no, I don't. I think justice is rubbish. I think I ought to be treated unfairly, and I think other people ought to be treated unfairly as well. I mean, that's piffle. So, you know, think about, you know, what is your personal reason why you want to go? If you come up with any sort of generic waffle like, oh, I believe in justice, don't bother. I mean, it's a terrible answer. And I keep banging on about, be personal, be individual, sell yourself. Remember that what you are going in there to sell to these people is not the idea of justice, it's not the idea of being at the bar. They know about those things, they know that the bar is a great profession. What they're interested in is, who are you? What are you going to bring to it? Why should you, out of the 800 other people who have applied for this pupillage, why should you be the one that gets it? Talk on the form, the application form, about your interests. And rule one, have some. Don't make everything worthy. You know, if I read an application form about somebody who tells me that, you know, they volunteer at their local Citizens Advice Bureau and give free legal advice to homeless people, and then they go home and until 11 o'clock every night they write letters on behalf of Amnesty International, and then they get up in the morning and start work for the charity that they've set up to end poverty, homelessness, hunger, pick your own ill in the world. I'm going to read it and I think, do I really want to spend 8 hours a day with this person? I don't think I do. I can't keep up apart from anything else. And also, I'm just not going to believe it. Everybody has some downtime when they do whatever it is that they do to relax. Tell us about it. We want to know that you are a person with a personality and a life outside of all the terribly worthy things that you may do. Tell me how you relax. You know, if you come into an interview and you happen to be interviewed by me, you know, if you tell me that, you know, my way of letting off steam and relaxing is to get onto a large, powerful motorbike, go out on public roads and behave like a lunatic, I will immediately think, ah! A kindred spirit, at last! So, you know, tell me who you are and what you're about. You've got to aim it at the set of chambers that you're applying to. The people who read these things are not stupid. They need to see some evidence in the form that it's aimed at them. If it's obviously just the generic application that you write for every set of chambers, and the only thing you've done is change the name of the set of chambers in the sentence that says, I would like to go to blank chambers, you'll get nowhere. Look at their website. Look at the biographies of their members. Look at the cases that they've been involved in. Say why you are interested in them. Why you are aware of them. Know what their recent high-profile cases are. If you go in for an interview, the chances are they will ask you about them. Show that you're interested in them. Talk about how you found out about them. Again, make it personal. Make it a link between you and them, rather than just some generic talk about wanting to go to the bar in general. Be specific, research, put hard work into your application, and it will have a chance of succeeding. Oh look, here come the adverts. We are on our second year of the bar professional training course at Kaplan. We are very popular. We are very small. We have 66 students this year. But the thing that we do that nobody else does is we actively select. If you apply to BPP or the College of Law, if on paper you've got the right sorts of things in your application, you've got the 2-1, you've done some mooting, that sort of thing, you're in. If you apply to Kaplan, if you've got all of those sorts of things on your application form, we'll invite you in for an interview. We will give you a short piece of written work to do. We will give you a little typed up scenario on which we want you to stand up and do a bit of advocacy. And you will find yourself in an interview room talking at somebody who is pretending to be a district judge or something like that, and you will be making some submissions in front of them, and then you will have an interview, which is an opportunity for you to tell us something a little bit more about you. If, at the end of that process, we think that you are somebody who is in with a realistic chance of having a career at the bar, you're in. If we don't, you're not coming in, because we want to make sure that everybody who comes to us has a realistic chance. We're busy. We've got a lot going on in our extracurricular programs. We have an advocacy committee that runs regular events that often involve members of the bar coming in as external speakers or people who are running workshops. We are very busy in external mooting competitions. We had people last year going to Germany for the finals of the European Jessup moot. We have a lot of people involved in competitions all over the place, and that is good experience for them, and it's stuff that looks good on their pupillage applications. I think you got the handout that I handed around earlier on from lawyer to be. We have pupillage rates that other bar schools can only envy. At the moment, I think I'm right in saying that on last year's results, nobody comes even close to us. Our teaching team are mostly people who have come from the bar quite regularly. I came directly from practice last year. There's a new member of the criminal team this year, Hugh Jenkins, who has 37 years of practice at the bar behind him. Between our teaching team, which is a very small team, we have well over 100 years of practice at the bar behind us, and we like to think that we know what we're talking about. We do a huge amount of outreach. We get people in sets of chambers involved with us. I'm just in the process of setting up a plea and mitigation advocacy competition, which we run in conjunction with 3 Raymond Buildings, a very high profile, very good criminal set. And that is an opportunity for the people who take part in that competition to be seen by some very senior members of a very good set, where they will then have a realistic chance of getting pupillage. And finally, we give away free money. I mentioned the advocacy committee. The members of the advocacy committee are all people who are co-opted onto the advocacy committee and basically told to get on and arrange the excellent programme of events that they arrange. And the quid pro quo for that is that all of them have a scholarship to some extent or another. I think it is still the situation that the Master or Mistress of Moots, who heads that committee, gets a 100% scholarship. So, in effect, they get to come to bar school free because we want people who are that good to run things at the school. So, that's all I want to say to you. I'm going to pause now because I think I've had enough talking so that you can ask some questions. Once we've done that, I'm going to be inviting you to fill in these contact cards where you can tell us who you are, what you're doing at the moment, and what your email address is. The effect of filling in one of these is that you get onto our mailing list, and this is important primarily because of our summer schools. This is something we do every year for both the LPC and the BPTC. They usually last for a day or two, and what we do is we get people in who are at about the stage that you're at, and we give you for absolutely nothing a day of not the teaching that you will get on the LPC or on the BPTC, but a taste of the sorts of things that you will do on those courses. The one that we ran in the summer just gone involved on the BPTC summer school, people arriving in the morning, having a morning of learning a bit about the techniques that we use to prepare ourselves for a trial, and then in the afternoon, in part, doing a trial, which you can imagine was far from perfect, but it was an opportunity for people to try out whether doing that sort of thing is the sort of thing that they would like to do ultimately in their professional lives. Those things, as you can imagine, because they are free, are enormously oversubscribed. If you fill in one of these cards, you will be one of the first people to know about it because you will get the email that will tell you that applications for those things have gone live, and you will get in with an opportunity to get yourself onto one of those. So please do fill in one of those before you go. But now, questions please.
You mentioned
yes.
at the beginning of your talk that the Inns of Court will offer scholarships.
Yes.
Is that something that you recommend doing before you even apply to the BPTC? Is that something you can do at perhaps second year?
I don't know what the individual rules of each inn are, but I do know that a lot of the people who come to us already have funding in place from their inn. Go to their websites, phone them up. You can most certainly join as a student member while you are still at university, and there is absolutely nothing to lose from doing it. You will also find that all of the inns run educational events that you might well be interested in going to. They are a great resource. They lay on an awful lot, much of which is free to go to, and they have the most extraordinary wine cellars, but you're not interested in. Yes, yes, sir.
Like in my own case, doing my master's here, I'm from Nigeria, but I've been court to bar since 2005. I've been a practicing lawyer in Nigeria. Now, if I want to be court to bar here, so that I can practice after my master's as a lawyer here, what are the procedures?
There's a new question, and one that I have to confess I don't know the answer to, and I'm not sure that I'm the ideal person to answer it for you. I suspect that somebody at one of the inns would be a better person to ask. I can't think that any of the inns would be better than any of the others for that purpose, but I would advise you to get in touch with any one of the inns. They've all got websites. Phone them up and talk to them. There will be somebody there who can give you chapter and verse about that. If they can't help you, the people who will be able to give you a really authoritative answer will be the Bar Council. And again, they have a website. Give them a call, and they are always happy to help.
Just to give an answer, there's some 1-year conversion course, and then if you're going to be a barrister, you have to have a supervisor in terms of chambers. If you're going to be a solicitor, you should have a supervisor as well, so it should be a solicitor's firm.
Okay, I mean that is certainly true, that there is a qualifying test known as QLTS, and I know that there's a test because I wrote some of the questions for it, but exactly what the rules are about how and when you take it and that sort of thing, the Bar Council would be better placed to answer for you.
In terms of mini pupillage application, or just trying to find one, what is the best way? Because obviously they have websites with, you know, formalized application forms where you can go and apply for mini pupillage. But what is the best way? How do you reckon we should go about if you want to find a mini pupillage?
The degree of formality with which mini pupillage applications are treated at different chambers varies enormously. Yes, there are some where you will find that there is perhaps an online form that you can fill in on the website, and if that's the way for that set of chambers, then do that. On some other chambers' websites, you'll see something that will say, well, if you're interested in mini pupillages, contact such and such a member of chambers. And if you're not sure about exactly what they do, or whether that's a set of chambers where you'd like to go for a mini pupillage, phone up. Phone up and just say, is there somebody there that I can talk to? Maybe somebody from the pupillage committee. You will find that one of the good things about the bar is that in general, people who are at the bar are great enthusiasts for the profession, and they are very keen that other people should join the profession, and therefore there are a lot of people who are very generous with their time in talking to you about things exactly like that. In some sets of chambers, there is no formal procedure. Just phone up. You know, if there is an area of law in which you are interested, you've seen a website for a set of chambers who look good in that area of law, just phone up and ask. And it is perfectly possible that they'll say, yeah, fine, come along such and such a date. It's always worth asking. You certainly lose nothing by doing it. Yes?
Is there any kind of like directory for chambers? So like if you were interested in family law, for instance?
There is a great big book called Chambers and Partners, which you should be able to find in your library. There is also a service called the Legal 500, which lists the top sets and top firms of solicitors in various areas of law. They are both worth looking at. But you know, that's how it was done when I was a boy. I hear now that you young people have something called Google. So if you're interested in family law, type in family law barristers, see what comes up. You know, one of the nice things about trying to get into the bar is that actually it's a very small profession. It's not like trying to get into a firm of solicitors where thousands of them will come up. We are a tiny profession, and you will quite readily find out who the top family sets are. Yes?
Is it true they're going to remove the division between solicitors and barristers and just merge the profession as well?
No.
If you had asked me 10 years ago what is the distinction between the barrister's profession and the solicitor's profession, I would have quite confidently said to you, well, in general, we do advocacy, they don't. That's not true anymore. For years now, solicitors have had higher rights of audience, and certainly there are criminal solicitors firms that have quite large in-house advocacy departments. So in general, when they are doing trials, they are not sending briefs out to members of the bar, they are simply sending their own employees along to court. There are still some distinctions between what we do and what they do. I'll talk about crime because it happens to be my area. For example, they go to police stations and represent people who are being interviewed by the police in police stations. We don't do that. They get defence witnesses into their offices and interview them, take statements from them. In general, we don't do that, although if push comes to shove, we can do it at court. The general theme, I would say, of the last 10 years of the development of the professions is that the distinctions between them are being broken down. Ask different people and they will give you different answers to the specific question that you've asked. Will there continue to be a distinction? Will there continue to be two separate professions, or will we end up with a large number of people, all of whom are simply called lawyers, all of whom have the same opportunities to do the same things? I simply don't know what the answer to that question is. What I do know is that the, to my mind, important distinction that remains at the moment is that we are independent sole traders and they work in firms. So if I turn up to court to prosecute a case and I find that the defendant is being represented by a member of the same chambers as me, it's not a problem. We have no formal link between us, whereas of course firms of solicitors can't in general represent people on both sides of the same dispute. At the moment, my view is that that independence is a thoroughly good thing. For example, in crime, it means that I can both prosecute and defend, whereas if I worked for the CPS, I'd only be able to prosecute. If I worked for a firm of defence solicitors, I would only be able to defend. And I take the view that I think a lot of people at the criminal bar take, which is that the defence work that I do makes me a better prosecutor and vice versa. And just for me, I think that the distinction between the professions is one that is well worth keeping. Whether the government we have at the moment will believe that, whether governments that we have in the future will believe that, I just can't tell you. I know that within the government at the moment, Baroness Deitch is an enormous fan of the bar and is doing everything that she can to maintain our independence. But will that last forever? I just don't know. Yes?
How do you feel about the possible introduction of alternative business structures, and what would that have in store for the bar?
One of the exciting things about going to the bar at the moment is, you know, if anybody asks you, well, how does it run, how is it structured, you know, you have to get your diary out of your pocket and say, well, which week are we on at the moment? Because, yes, it is changing very, very fast. Something that is coming in at the moment is something called ProcureCo, which is an opportunity for sets of chambers and firms of solicitors to go into working partnerships whereby we tender for work together. That's never been allowed before. It's been a very strict rule of the bar that we have to be absolutely independent and we are not allowed to enter into any kind of partnership with any other profession. How will that work? We don't know. If my set of chambers, for example, enters into a partnership with a firm of criminal defence solicitors, and a member of Chambers then turns up at court to prosecute a case that is being defended by that firm of solicitors, can we do it? Do we have a professional conflict if we do that? As far as I know, nobody knows the answers to that question yet. So, do I know what specific differences, the specific changes that are coming at us all the time will make? The answer is no. The only thing I can absolutely assure you of is that the scenery will keep on changing at a bewildering rate, because that's been the experience of the last 10 years. And we are all, to an extent, making it up as we go along. We are trying to work out how we live with the changes as they come. But I think the question you ask is a good one, and it is absolutely certain that the structures are changing. What the details of that are, watch this space. Yes.
Do you reckon the future of the bar will be as having now just got solicitors firm with in-house barristers? Do you think that is ever possible to happen?
Anything is possible. Remember that I said that the problem that you have in crime is that in effect there is only one customer, and it's the government. And the way the professions are structured comes down in the end to a large extent to what the government are prepared to pay for. If they convince themselves that the cheapest way of providing legal services in that area is to have solicitors' firms with in-house, in effect, sets of chambers with barristers within them, they will change the funding arrangements so that that happens. And remember, they don't actually have to change the rules and tell us you have to behave in that way, because they hold the purse strings if they change the funding arrangements so that in reality the only way you can make a living out of doing it is to do that. That's what everybody will do. So if you want me to give you any assurances about what the bar will look like in 5 years' time or 10 years' time, I can't do that. I'd love to be able to. What I do know is that if in the future there is going to be that sort of change, it is my very firm belief that the people that the solicitors' firms will be looking to recruit into their in-house advocacy departments are much more likely to be newly qualified barristers than newly qualified solicitors, because they will know that on the course that I teach on at Bar School, we do hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of advocacy training. And that is taught by people like me. And not only do I do advocacy for a living in real life, I'm also an advocacy trainer for Lincoln's Inn. I train people who are already qualified as barristers to improve their advocacy. And everybody in both the professions knows that. So my view is that even if the two professions are going to come to some way of working that is much closer together, perhaps even within the same firms or chambers or structures or whatever we're going to call them in the future, it is still the case that there are particular skills that you will be trained in if you go to bar school, and there will be particular skills that barristers are still valued for, that will give you a way into a career in advocacy that won't necessarily be open to you if you train as a solicitor. That is hedged about with the usual caveat, no guarantees, I can't see the future, but it seems to me to be pretty well certain that opportunities for advocacy will remain better for barristers than they are for solicitors. Any more for any more?
Okay. Well, I think on behalf of the Society, I'd like to thank you, Steve, for coming in. I'm sure that everyone's been given a lot to think about. Perhaps if people would like to grab a few of these.
Yeah, grab a card, fill it in, help yourself to another chocolate. You've been here for a long time. I'm sure your blood sugar is dipping to a dangerous